Welcome to another conversation in People in Fundraising. This podcast features interviews with nonprofit professionals who discuss their career journeys, lessons learned, and enthusiasm for working in fundraising. And here is your host, the founder of People in Fundraising, Tim Wilson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode in Season 4 of the People in Fundraising podcast series. I am very excited today to welcome two people, Kerry Vanaria and Josh Merrow, who have known me literally since my first day as a temp in nonprofit work in 2000. And they both have seen me, and Josh, you can see in his background, is at Teal Hall, which is where I spent most of my career. So it's good to see some familiar touches of Teal Hall there.
It hasn't changed much, Tim. If you came back, it really has not changed. So,
I'm really looking forward to having you both on the program and to spotlight two people that see me since day one and meant a lot to me in my career developing. So, Kerry and Josh, if you can please introduce yourselves by your title, and we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm Kerry Vanaria. I am Senior Director of Development at Harvard Business School. I oversee the gift opportunities and moves management side, as well as doing some prospect management work. I've been here for, I believe it's now 27 years.
Awesome.
It's crazy to say.
Yes. Thanks, Kerry.
Because I'm only 28, so yes.
And so I'm Josh Merrow. I am Senior Philanthropic Advisor here at the school. I'm a frontline principal gifts fundraiser. I've also been here nearly 27 years and have had any number of roles here at the school in that time. So I pretty much every frontline role I've had it. So that's my background. Yeah.
Awesome. It's great to hear that. Thank you both. I'd love for you each to take about 5 minutes, and starting with Kerry, and talk about how you entered the field. And given both of your records of longevity at HBS, I think our audience would love to hear how your own careers have progressed in development in the various roles you've had, please.
Sure. I started working at Harvard after I graduated from college, and I had worked in an office during college and really enjoyed working in higher education and the people who chose to work in higher education. So I worked at a research project at the Graduate School of Education first and liked it, but it didn't fit quite with what I was doing. And I had a friend who was doing development work at the time, and I was like, I think I would like that. So a job kind of opened up across the river as staff assistant on the newly formed major gifts team at HBS. And I got the job the next day. Susan Hamilton was the person who hired me. I still say the quickest hire I've ever seen at HBS, but I don't know. And I came in as a staff assistant supporting a couple of the major gift officers and the individual who was running the stewardship at the time, and really enjoyed it. I really liked working at the business school. I didn't know a lot about business, and so I really enjoyed kind of that aspect of it. Like I said, the major gift function was just really developing, so it was great to be at kind of the early part of developing that team and the operations side of things, and moved more into the donor relations side, and eventually grew that into a team that's kind of split off from the major gifts function, and did that for many years, which was fantastic, and worked really closely with Josh, as a lot of the principal gift prospects were the ones that have kind of, specialized gift terms and negotiations and different events. And so did a lot of work kind of on that side. Later in life, married and had children. And when I came back, after having my first child, came into doing more of a strategic role within development, working on special projects, amongst other things, and found that I really enjoyed kind of the project management side, the operations. I think, Tim, there was a time I actually kind of managed you in like
That's
on the
right.
research team for
That's
a little
right.
bit too. Yeah, but really, I think loved kind of the marriage of like the external work. I do have prospects that I manage that I've known
Okay.
for a long time and have, worked on with them a very small amount, but I think it's been very important to give me the perspective of what somebody like Josh has to go through to a donor. And I like having my foot kind of both in external and internal. I think the strategy stuff is really like where I love to be and kind of taking someone's idea and then moving towards implementation. So now I am really focused on kind of a lot of the development operations, like how are we managing our pipeline? How are we putting together portfolios to ensure that we're seeing the right people? There's a lot of interface internally within our development function with our research team, our donor relations team, the dean's office, like people on campus, people across the university. And I really enjoyed that part of my job a lot. Like I get to kind of connect people like together because I've been here so long. I know a lot of people on campus. I've worked with them on different things over time. So if a fundraiser is kind of looking for where I need somebody that works on healthcare, can you like make a recommendation or make an introduction of who would be a good person? I can kind of connect those people. And that's one of the stuff I really enjoy. I'm like a lifelong learner. I think I'm
Yeah.
always, reading and like trying to understand new things. So I've had lots of opportunities to take on different projects and different roles kind of over time. And like right now, I'm really excited about how technology is changing our the work that we do, not to replace fully the work that we do, but just to actually leverage kind of the time and the work of people like Josh so we can do our job even better. So that's kind of where I'm pouring my energy into is like I manage a small team still but I'm also kind of really excited about how technology is going to change the work that we do so that there's just even more opportunities, at lower levels and higher levels for individuals to, do really great work. Um, so yeah, and I get to work with people like Josh for 27 years.
Yeah.
I started the week before Josh, although he claims he started the week before me. So.
Yeah. Yeah, we can have that debate if you want, but I think you don't get to work with me. You're stuck working with me for 27 years. But yeah. Um, so I came into development. I graduated from college and started off as a teacher. I spent 5 years teaching. I lived in Costa Rica and did as a volunteer, worked in a very rural place, teaching English. I worked at a boarding school in Switzerland for about a year, very fancy boarding school, and that was kind of a unique experience teaching U.S. high school kids. Then went to went to rural Maine. I taught at Hebron Academy, which is not a very fancy boarding school, for a few years teaching high school history. I taught AP U.S. history and European history and geography and coached 3 sports and lived in a dorm. And while I enjoyed teaching, I discovered really that I wanted to stay within education, but sort of expand my horizons and use different skill sets and whatnot. And so it was with that in mind that I went to the ed school, decided to do the 1 year master's program there. And while I was at the ed school, did an internship at Mass General in their development office. And I would go down once a week. I would like sit in on meetings. Internally, I sat in on a couple of actual solicitations. Like this guy brought me to meet with donors and a doctor, and while an ask was going on, I don't know why they would do this, but it was like an amazing experience for me. And this guy, Dave Buren, who was the one who sort of oversaw my internship, just gave me this great advice. He's like, and this, by the way, was 95. This is like mid 90s. Okay. He's like, in your lifetime, fundraising is going to explode. Like there's going to be this incredible transfer of wealth. The number of billion-dollar campaigns is going to like skyrocket. There's just going to be tons of good professional opportunity. It's a way to stay mission focused while also actually, making a living and having what he thought was an amazing career. So with that in mind, I finished with the ed school, and I took a job at another boarding school in Western Mass, Wilbraham Munson Academy. I started as director of alumni programs. I would, run the homecoming and the reunions. I was a terrible event planner. I should not come anywhere near events. I ran the annual fund, and this was small potatoes. This was like our entire annual fund was like $500,000, and
Okay.
but it was an important $500,000. Like if you didn't raise the money, there were like budget consequences. It was stressful, and but I enjoyed it, and I was on this learning curve, and I worked there 3 years. I ended up as the director of development, and yeah, in spring of '98, I had an interview with Anne Klein, who was running the HBS Fund. And ended up hiring me, and it's how I ended up here. And I've spent, the last 27 years, as I mentioned, doing all kinds of jobs. The first role was assistant director of the HBS Fund, just running a couple of class campaigns.
Hmm.
And that's when I would have met the two of you, and we were off to the races. Yeah, so yeah, that's how I ended up here. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. I am struck that you both touched on two different aspects of fundraising. You both mentioned events, and you both in different ways talked about either yourself or earlier in your career, people that looked forward into the future. So Josh, it was when you're interning at Mass General, and then Kerry, you mentioned how technology will continue to significantly impact, alter development work. So really, I want to touch on those points just as a quick follow-up. As you look at the experiences you've had in your different roles, is there one particular donor experience, donor engagement that stands out as very meaningful, memorable, without giving away names or company names? Just something you could share that's like, this is something worth remembering because it's profound, or it helps me see fundraising and its impact in a new light. And if Kerry wants to go first.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, so I think I laughed when Josh said he's not an event planner, because like I tend to plan the events that Josh does, and so in a sense we're a good pair.
Yeah.
So when I think about some of like the biggest gifts, like for some of the buildings, those projects that I've worked on, there's multiple events that happen, and you really get to know the family and the donors, and it's really kind of a wonderful experience, because you see how it is like a family, and the family comes together to kind of celebrate these gifts at HBS. And I think in a lot of ways these are people that do things like this at other schools, and like so it was always an opportunity of like, how can we do it differently? How can we do it kind of like really special? And we had a donor who actually recently passed away, and this is probably why it's top of mind, because I got to know the family really well, and they had a very large family, lots of grandchildren who they wanted to kind of be there and be part of it. And like we were able to kind of incorporate into this very formal event, like ways for the grandchildren to kind of be part of it and to understand the legacy. And they all, it was a building, so we had them all kind of draw their pictures of the building, and we had infants like through 18-year-olds, and we had them all on display in the building, like when it kind of opened. And like,
Wow.
The grandparents had these pictures for many, many years in their house. Like it just meant a lot to them. And after all of these events kind of ended, the donor and his wife came to me and said, like, you're part of our family now. And they gave me a couple of like small kind of gifts that I have on my shelf in my office. And like I think about them, but it's like the opportunity of like, we're here to help make an impact and to help kind of donors feel recognized and this is a really special place. And so I think when I think back on my memories, and I've had being here as long as I have, like really deep relationships with some people. And um, at the end of the day, even though technology is changing, like philanthropy is always going to be personal and it's going to be really high touch like that. And so um, I think there's, that to me is like what the future looks like, but it's also like why we stay in and we kind of do what we do. It's the people that we have the opportunity to work with, whether it's colleagues, but also kind of donors. And they're really amazing and remarkable people. And um, that's what I like being able to kind of give someone a wow moment
Yeah.
and make something like really special to me is what I really enjoyed the most about my roles in the past.
I love that answer. That was touching. Thank you, Kerry. Josh, how about you?
So the question is one example that stands out, I guess, in terms of impact.
Yeah.
And Carrie mentioned impact. I want to recognize that we're all sort of disciples of Howard Stevenson, who talked about who's a professor at the business school and the head of external relations, and really our lead fundraiser in that first campaign. And Howard talked all about impact, that the case for giving to Harvard or really any well-funded, university is it has to be based on impact, not need. And he extrapolated that to say pretty much any organization, even if you're needy, should talk about impact and the impact that gifts make. And so, yeah, my one example is so not getting into names and specifics. It was a donor who in Harvard's last campaign funded one of the named through a large endowment gift named one of Harvard schools, School of Education of C's, Engineering and Applied Sciences. And I think what made that one remarkable is that while I played a role working with the donor on the gift, it was really just an extension of his relationship with the school, which started when he graduated in 1980. If you look at this guy's giving history, it started with a $50 gift. It was $50 for 5 years, maybe $1,000 at his 5th or 10th year reunion, slowly crept up from there. But all along, our predecessors in these roles were just cultivating him and soliciting him and, recruiting him onto reunion campaign committees, doing all the right stuff. Before I worked with this donor, Tracy Van Dorpe worked with him. Before Tracy, it was Flo Amoroso who really identified him as someone to keep an eye on. By the time I inherited him, all the hard work had been done. And, I think, and when I'm long gone from here, I know that there are donors that I will have worked with who will have been passed on to others. And, we're all just like planting seeds and great things will come from those relationships and those touch points. And it's just this continuum that is going to continue like long after we're gone. And it's an allegory for life. It's wonderful. So I think that would be my example, but there's been many, and we've been blessed to, I think, be here at HBS to have these relationships. It's really special.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for sharing those anecdotes. They do touch at, as Kerry mentioned, like, that is the foundation of philanthropy. Just engaging those relationships and cultivating them and knowing what is meaningful for the donor and their families. And I remember one, it was also a building dedication on the HBS campus, probably about 10 years ago. And it was very generous. Like, I think all the staff were invited over to campus, the main campus, where Kerry and Josh work is a little bit off of the main campus at HBS. And I remember sitting out on this lawn in a folding chair, and I'm like, I'm this, nobody from southeastern Massachusetts, and like 20 feet away from me are some very prominent business people and politicians. And it was sort of like this, is this real? Like, I'm this close to these people, I'm seeing them. Like, it was just amazing. And to see a little bit more concretely all the work that went into the day of the event and the lead up to it. For someone that typically works, behind a screen in prospect management, to see those efforts all come to fruition and to have it occurring before your eyes was just remarkable. Um, we talked a little bit about the length of time you've been in the field, and I'm really struck that both of you have spent so much in development at one place, at Harvard Business School. And I would just love to hear if you can share a little bit about, why you have had such a long runway at Harvard Business School when you're both very successful in your particular roles, and what's made you say, hey, this is where I want to put down my roots, please.
I guess from my perspective, I will say we have the most amazing alumni. We have the most amazing prospects. And I think over time, I've developed an interest in business and really a passion in believing that business is a source for good in this world. And I just find it to be fascinating to learn all the time that this company, that employs all these people was founded by a Harvard Business School grad, and maybe someone similar to what you said, Tim. I grew up in a tiny little town in Connecticut, right? And what am I doing here now, right?
Yes.
This is amazing. And I think that's education to me. That is the power of education. It can bring you to places that you would never imagine going. And I think there's a lot of people even sitting in or who have sat in the Harvard Business School classroom that feel exactly that kind of same way. So for me, it's, I deeply believe in the mission. And I think both between kind of, like I said before, the colleagues and the prospects and, the faculty, I really do think that, there's a way to make an impact, and my work is making an impact. And I say it all the time that no 2 years are the same. I think longevity gives you perspective a little bit. I think as
Definitely.
leadership changes happen, as they do in universities and institutions and all of that, it gives you perspective of yeah, this is great, but it's really not going to change my day to day all that much. And like I said, the relationships that I have with colleagues, not just within our department, but across the school, across the university, are really deep. And so whenever I've thought about is there another place? And I've always looked at other things. I've kind of always come back to, as long as I'm feeling challenged here and I'm being given the opportunities and, I feel like I'm still making an impact, then this is the right place for me. But I think a lot, I think Josh said it. I think a lot about what is someone sitting in my seat 20 years from now going to say about the things that we did or the strategic decisions that we made? Are they going to be like, what were they thinking? But I think a lot about that. I feel like it's kind of, and maybe that's because I came from the stewardship background, but I do think a lot about what is my role in kind of in this part of the institution's history. And I think that's what's kept me here, all those years. It's every day is different. I get to do a lot of different things, and it's always kind of created kind of a challenge for me, both personally and professionally, that has kept me busy
Yes.
and engaged.
Thank you, Kerry.
Yeah, as usual, Kerry said it better than I really can, but I will attempt to answer the question. And I do think, adding on to what Kerry said, there comes a point when you're a long hauler where I don't know what, if it's year 15 or 20 or when it is, but at some point it just gets the idea of leaving or the consequence of leaving and what you would leave behind becomes really hard to grapple with. And when you weigh that against some other opportunity, it's hard. And it's really all about relationships. It's if I think of leaving, It's the relationships with donors that I've built over years that I'd be starting all over again somewhere else. It's doable. And there are times when it's absolutely the right move. But in my mind, if you have, because I know many people in the field, and this was me, by the way, in my first role, I was at this boarding school. I had been a teacher at a boarding school. I knew what I was getting into, but at the end of the day, for development, that wasn't for me. It just wasn't a big enough pond. And I was, when you work in these smaller offices, you're doing everything yourself. And so that wasn't the right fit for me. So I took a look at what else might make sense. And honestly, it was a fluke that I ended up here. It was literally a listing in the old Boston Globe that I don't even think it was monster.com. I think it was literally the Boston Globe, the job listing. And I would just say that three things aligned for me to be here. One is mission, one is the second is the people, and the third is the place. And by mission, Kerry hit on it. It's leaders who make a difference in the world. It's a powerful mission. It's one I believe in. Its engine is business is the engine of prosperity, and all that entails. And I had always believed that beforehand, and it was like I was just drinking the Kool-Aid and have immersed myself in that over time. I also love the case method. The best classes I took at the ed school were case method pedagogy, and I love that. And so the mission was important. The people, you guys know, it's our colleagues here in ER, it's our faculty, it's our donors. We've worked for like 4 amazing deans. And all the senior associate deans, all the characters, Warren McFarland, Rob Kaplan, of course, I mentioned Howard before. Now it's Fritz. I mean, these are really interesting people who get to travel, spend they're stuck like spending all this time with us. We might as well make the most of it. So it's the people, and then it's the place. I would just say that HBS is a part of Harvard, and Harvard is a part of Boston. And I love it all. I think Boston's the best city in the world. It really feels to me more like a big town capital of New England than it does a city, but we have direct flights all over the world. I just made use of one last week, flying to Hong Kong. But then I always love coming back to Boston. So when I've thought about going somewhere else, I've thought about leaving all those things behind: the people, the mission, Harvard, Boston, and I've just, for better for worse, stuck around. And so Kerry is stuck seeing me every day. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for those very reflective answers. It's really just, it's meaningful for me to hear your responses, because I knew you both for about 18 years, and to get a sense of what it is, what are the characteristics that make your roles at Harvard Business School and the place itself and the people and the mission so meaningful is really important. So thank you. And, I think for me, Kerry was the one who actually started my full-time role at Harvard Business School, the first one in my career. I was temping and working with Josh and Kerry and Paul Callahan, specifically, a major gifts officer at the time. And I was taking classes at the extension school at night and loved connecting a couple days a week as a temp in Teal Hall. And one day, I remember it, Kerry said to me, I think they're hiring for a staff assistant on the research team. And it was the other end of the 4th floor in Teal, and I didn't even know where they worked. Like, I had always just been on your guys' side of the 4th floor. But that one little, almost not a pass, it was kind of a passing comment, but just also like, you should go talk to Val Roberts and just see what they do, see if it aligns with some of your interests and skills. And so I'm just very appreciative, Kerry, that you suggested that to me, because I never could have planned my career. When Josh was talking about, he found the ad in the old Boston Globe, it just reminded me how my own career started. So thank you for that.
I think there's a lot of people in development that fall into it more than kind of seek it out, as just my experience. But I think one of the great things is there's lots of different avenues within development and external relations fundraising that where you can go to. And so,
Yeah.
and I think it's an environment that nurtures that side and like, encourages, or I've always tried to encourage people to like try different things and like figure out what you like. Like not everybody who's internal needs to have an external presence. And there's some people that would never want to have prospects, but that works for me. And
Yeah.
I had the flexibility to kind of shape that in a way. I'm grateful. Like I was a temp too at the ed school before I got hired. So I think it used to be a really good entree
Yeah.
into these roles. And you did it all yourself though, Tim. So in that you've gotten yourself to where you are yourself.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We have about 15 minutes left, and I just, having both of you answer is really meaningful. I want to get to this fourth question here because it's a remark from a co-founder of Harvard's negotiating program, William Ury, and I would love to get your thoughts on his thoughts about obstacles in someone's career. And so William Ury once said, quote, "The single biggest obstacle to us getting what we want, it's not the difficult person, it's ourselves," end quote. And so you both got these questions ahead of time. And as you've reflected on your careers related to obstacles, I would love to hear whatever you're comfortable sharing. Can you point to an obstacle moment in your careers where you had to push through, whatever ideas, emotions you brought to, I need a new FTE, or I think we really should launch this program. And you got some pushback either from colleagues, senior leadership. How did you work through encountering an obstacle? And given your longevity and the various roles you've had, I think your answers could be really illuminating for our audience, please.
I guess I would say working at a place like Harvard, like you're going to encounter obstacles all the time. And I think what I've seen is a lot of people come in and think they're going to change things and make things different. And there is opportunities to be innovative. I don't want that to kind of be the message, but there are some things that you're just not gonna change. And so you have to kind of creatively figure out how to like get over that obstacle. And I kind of like that way. And I've seen lots of people come in and just kind of hit that brick wall time and time again. And it's really it can be really frustrating, I think, for people. But I think my perspective has always been to like, well, let's figure out what we can do within the kind of the constraints that we have. Now, in the moment, that probably wasn't my productive response, but I think, I think as long as you understand the reasoning for a decision, I think people can, figure out a solution. And to me, it's always having to like people like Josh, like colleagues that I can go to and confide in, can talk through it. And so in those difficult times, give me perspective. Like I said, I think before, like different leadership changes like mean different things. And sometimes, it's not always the best fit. Like you have a new manager who comes in and you're starting from scratch, right? You have to build kind of that relationship. And I think it's kind of perspective that as different as things may seem, when you get back to the core of our work and why we do our work, it doesn't seem as surmountable as an obstacle.
Thank you. I like that, Kerry. How about you, Josh?
When I read the question, I thought about FY24, the whole year. And so this isn't an internal example of like having an idea that I wanted to advance, but just, in the spirit of obstacles and people and difficult people and whatnot, from October 7th until well into last summer, this was a tough year for Harvard. This was a tough year for HBS, a lot of soul searching. just a lot of emotion and a lot of justifiably angry people and frustrated and sad and all of that. It was just emotional. And it for a while there, it felt like every call, every Zoom, every meeting was just like you were kind of getting beaten up. Not everyone, but an awful lot of them. And what I took away, which is part of what this quote is getting at, is like it would be easy, I think, for all of us to feel sorry for ourselves. Like, why are we going through this? I had nothing to do with what's going on now, for me. When really it was, these people had every right to feel what they were feeling. Some of Harvard's closest friends were the most angry and vocal about it. Some were angry and quiet about it. They would, share their frustrations with us directly without going to the press. Others were on Twitter. It was it was a tough thing. So the problem there, I think the quote's good. It's like the problem there wasn't the difficult person I had to be dealing with at any given time. We at Harvard were, we had some problems that we had to confront. And by the way, Alan was, as president, when he became president, midway through, was very upfront about this. He's like, people are justified in being upset and frustrated. Harvard has things to work on. And so the problem wasn't the difficult donor, the angry alum. It was things that we had to confront and sort of move beyond. So that was my example when I read the question. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And very, very topical. I appreciate that, Josh. So we have about 10 minutes. I wonder if I could possibly get in the responses from you both on that last quote. I'll have to shorten it. But you've both spoken so well about meaningful relationships with donors and colleagues and the relationship you have with the institution as well. So the founder of Axios, Jim Vandehide, once said, and he's thinking about his own career in life, I learned something from every dumb move and used it to try to get the big things right in my life and in my work. And for him, those big things were the good stuff, as he called it, deep, meaningful relationships with family, a few deep and durable friendships, faith and connection beyond myself, and doing consequential work with people I enjoy and admire. So that's the end of Jim's quote. And I admire you both. And I would love to hear what might constitute some of your good stuff in our last 5 minutes or so, please.
Can I have Josh go first?
Sure.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, I think this is inherent in the quote and what he said, but to me, it's the people. And I would just, when I think back to the jobs I had before coming here, when I think back to teaching in Maine, or I think back to doing fundraising in Wilbraham, or pretty much any phase of my life, I don't remember a specific class I taught. I don't remember a specific event that I managed or the email that I wrote on any given day or any specific input to what the job was. I just remember the people. Yeah. It's the only thing you really remember, and at the end of the day, it's what really matters. And I know this probably just sounds like a cliche, answer, but honestly, when we leave from here, when we retire, whatever, or move on, it's just going to be the people. I already think this way, Tim. When I think about your years here, and I think about some of the people, it just brings a smile to my face. I mean, a lot of really happy memories, a lot of laughs. And along the ways we lose people too, and that's that drives it home like nothing else. It's like life is short, and people are by far the thing that matter the most. And so that's what I think.
Beautiful, thank you.
Yeah, no, Josh, you said it well. I mean, I guess I would say too, it's the place where you work, where you spend the majority of your time, is it more than just a job? And I think for me, working the opportunity to work at Harvard, at HBS for all these years, it is more than just a job. I mean, school has grown so much. And I think Josh and I both benefited from being here when it was a little smaller and when kind of the operation was a little grittier in some ways, and being part of building it. But I think it's also the stuff outside of the work in our
Mm.
personal lives. And I think both Josh and I can say, when there have been things that have happened in our personal life, you knew your job and the people that you worked with were going to be there to support you. And you were never concerned about, you know, uh, taking time off or not. But these, people really cared and people really kind of came together. And I think about like when I had kind of my first child, like, someone in another department knitted me a hat, and
Yeah.
somebody who also lived in my town, but I didn't work with a ton, left like a banana bread in my mailbox, like one day at home. Like it's beyond that, like that you are kind of part of something bigger, and that to me, as how do you maintain that as we've gotten bigger? Because like, even Tim, when you were here, it was kind of a really small place. And didn't
Sure.
for years, Tim, didn't you like maintain like the contact list and who's come and gone for many
Yes.
years?
Yes, I
Yes.
did maintain that for like my entire time there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of people that have come and gone, and then
Yeah.
there's some of us like that have kind of stayed, and people who have left that we've kind of kept in touch with. And like I do think you know, I think the people that stay do feel a bigger connection, I think, to the
Sure.
place.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the reasons kind of why we stay. In a lot of ways. But I do think it's important, like in those times when you're going through something or a big life change, like does the institution give you the support that you need? And I think that's proven to be always the case for me. And I think I'm speaking for Josh, but the same. So
Yeah.
No, I would just add, like, that's such a great observation. And if you think about it, high school is 4 years, college is 4 years. This last job I had was 3 years. We've been here 27 years. And when you do that, you go through every one of life's ups and downs,
Totally.
from like getting married to having kids to losing parents and, and it is part of the calculation in terms of staying with a place a long time. And this is a credit to really, for being out like John MacArthur, who I think there were decisions made about the community and the culture of this place that probably happened before we got here.
Mm.
And it has always been, this is going to sound like a big advertisement for HBS, your podcast here, but like I do think it's important that there's a culture around here where people feel supported, and it's been, I've had to fall back on that a few times here, and
Sure.
we all have. It's life, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it's all what it's about.
Yes. Well, thank you both for sharing those answers and reflecting on the people and the institution, what it's meant for you. I have my own moments that how I would answer that too with HBS and the people that supported me with all the life stages that Josh just talked about, and Kerry as well. I've just really enjoyed reconnecting with you both, Kerry and Josh. This has been so fun, so meaningful for me. And I just appreciate your time today to come on as guests and share a bit about your career and what you've learned along the way.
You too,
well,
Tim.
Tim, congratulations to you, because I think what you're doing is phenomenal and wonderful and, really great for our industry. And it's a real testament to your commitment too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot.
Well said. Absolutely, Tim. Keep it up. Keep going.
Thank
You got
you.
another couple hundred of these in you. You just got to keep finding people.
Well, thank you, Kerry and Josh, and thank you to our audience for your support. When these interviews air on LinkedIn and YouTube, the audio only airs on Spotify and Podbean. And you can also find Kerry and Josh's conversation on my new website, which is sponsored by Luis Diaz of the Donor Participation Project, peopleinfundraising.wordifysites.com. Kerry and Josh, your interview will air in March, so just a few weeks from now. And I look forward to sharing your remarks with our audience. And hopefully someday on one of my trips back to Boston, it'd be fun to reconnect in person. I know the bus stop is gone, right?
It's gone. It's gone.
So,
Long gone.
we'll have to
No
find
more bus
somewhere
stop.
else.
Yeah. You wouldn't believe Western Avenue, Tim.
The
if you saw
neighborhood
it
has
today.
changed, Tim.
It's
Yeah,
like,
boy.
it's amazing.
Awesome. Well, thank you both and have a great rest of your day.
Okay,
You're
Tim.
welcome.
Thank
No
you.
problem.
Bye-bye.